Welcome to the Women in Wealth podcast, brought to you by Regina McCann HESS, a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience. This show is for professional women who want guidance in working towards their retirement vision in learning, building, planning, striving for your dreams, and putting the work in now so that you can pursue your financial independence. Hello, I'm Regina McCann HESS, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to talk about financial literacy, and it is a big topic, right? So, gosh, there's so many avenues, or what I like to call rabbit holes, that we can go down. I can only pick like maybe one or two for our time frame, but I thought it would be good because it's like Financial Literacy Month in April, and we're at the tail end of April at this point. But I thought it would be just good to just have a basic conversation about it. You know, understanding your finances isn't just about the numbers. It's about building your confidence, your security, and a future that you can count on. Whether or not you're planning for your retirement, navigating a major life transition, or looking just to grow your wealth or build a nest egg, a cushion, a safety net, whatever you want to call it, it still is a foundation. You're building your foundation that if you build it the right way, they will come, right? Isn't that the popular movie? But if you do build it the right way, it can take you years and years from now. It will help you be more and more successful if that foundation is strong. So you build that foundation and you just keep adding to it and building it and building it. And you're, in the meantime, building great habits too, because if you're teaching yourself good habits and you're sticking with them, then those habits are going to take you through hopefully your lifetime. So we're going to dive a little bit into that. You know, like I said, there's a lot of things that you can talk about with financial literacy, from the gamut of, investing and banking and financial planning, taking a step towards your long-term financial health. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was budgeting, because it's one of the basic things, right? A lot of people talk about, oh, this is how much I make, and this is my salary and I'm so proud. And then we look at the balance sheet. A lot of people are really good about keeping that balance sheet equal, or even better, we want a lot on the left side, which are your savings, your investments, your assets. And then on the right side of the balance sheet are your liabilities. We want to keep that to a minimum, obviously. Now, realistically, we all have debt. We all have liabilities. We're going to have student debt, most likely for the kids coming out of college. You're going to have a car loan, and most likely you're going to have a mortgage, through most of your adult life until you can pay that off as you get closer to retirement. Or with some people, they make that a priority to get that paid off a lot sooner. So that all goes down to what are your goals. But again, if we can keep you on your balance sheet focusing on that, building that left side and keeping that right side, that liability side or debt side, to a minimum, it's really, really going to help you on the long term. So that's why I say when I'm talking to people, it's not about what you make. It's about what you keep. And in order to focus on keeping more of your money in your pocket and not at the stores or wherever else it goes, and I'm guilty of that too, right? But we want to try and focus on what we can keep. And so a good way to do that would be to look at budgeting. So there's a lot of rules, or, you may not even say they're rules, or maybe they're thoughts. Maybe there's a lot of thoughts around budgeting. Is this budgeting better or is that budgeting better? And some people will come out and say, well, that budgeting doesn't work because I like to do it this way. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, budgeting works if it's something you're going to follow and it's something you're going to build a habit on, whether or not it's the budget I like or the budget somebody else likes, you have to pick something that's going to work for you. So let's talk about one of the budgets that I come across is the 50-30-20 budget rule. And that's where it's kind of like a simple, type of budget where you allocate your net income, of course, towards needs, wants, and savings and debt repayment. So 50% of the budget would go towards needs. And what would be your needs? Your housing, your transportation, insurance, food, healthcare, utilities. And I shouldn't say net paycheck, because some of these things are coming out of your paycheck before it gets to your bank account. So we'll just say overall, right? So, what are your basic needs? Do you have a house? What's the mortgage? What's the rent? That's part of that 50%. What are your utilities? And part of that, we can go down another rabbit hole here and talking about utilities. Yes, we need, heat, air conditioning, lights, water, things like that. And then we also need some kind of internet. But do we need 10 or 15 subscriptions for TV channels? I don't know. I'm pretty stingy about that kind of stuff. My family fights me all the time, but those are places where we can save money, limiting those types of things. I won't go on my soapbox about that. Don't worry. But those are things that come into the 50% needs bucket. So that's part of your budget, right? The next thing are for your wants. 30% of your money can go to wants. Now that's your takeout dinners. You're going out to dinner at the restaurant, or lunches every day. That adds up. If you're working and you're getting your lunch out every day or buying your lunch every day, it adds up a lot. So that's a want. That's not a need, because you can go to the supermarket, get your salad stuff, make it yourself, or your sandwich. So that becomes a want when you buy the lunch. Cocktails with friends. Yes, we want to do this, but it falls into the wants. Decorations for your house, new furniture for the house, things like that. Whatever the new technology is. Oh, Apple just came out with a new iPhone. I need that. Nope, it's not a need. It's a want. Stays in that category of 30%. And can you budget for that? There's technology coming out all the time, and I have some friends and family members who are like total tech geeks, and they're like, oh, I gotta have the latest and greatest. I'm like, okay, well, all right, that's still your want. Kind of keep it in that category. And there's other things that I'm not even thinking about. Obviously, travel. I mean, I love to travel with my family, but it's a want. So it has to go into the budget that way. So those are fun things to do. And there's a lot of, ways you can look at this as far as looking at your wants and your needs, and I'm going to pick on you coffee drinkers, that coffee stop that you make every morning. That's not a need. That's a want. I'm sorry, don't throw things at me, right? You can make that coffee yourself. I know it's fancy and it feels good, and you get your name on the cup and they say hello to you. Well, if it's not in your budget, maybe, or if you're trying to save money, maybe instead of every day getting that coffee, get it down to like 2 or 3 times a week, I should say, to help your budget. Okay, sorry, soapbox just keeps coming out, right? But I pick on coffee. I will be honest, I pick on coffee drinkers because I don't drink coffee, but I drink, iced tea and things like that. And I used to be a big Diet Coke person, and my want budget went towards Diet Coke. But we all have our own things, and we all need to have them in our lives, right? Because we want to enjoy our lives. We're not, just waiting until we fall off the cliff to have fun, but we just got to balance it out. So then we go into the 20% of the next part of your budget, and that is your savings and your debt repayment. Obviously, if you have a student loan, that's really important to pay, because that's also going to help, any kind of debt, as long as you're paying that off and in good standing, that's helping your credit report for the next time you have to borrow money. You want your credit report to be strong and be good. The other thing you want to, obviously your mortgage, that's a fixed debt. You could have a car loan, things like that. So that, you want to make sure you appropriate money for that. And the other part of that 20% bucket of your budget is for saving. And now that is your retirement savings. That's your rainy day savings. That's your, hey, I want to buy a shore house in 5 years savings. So within that 20%, how much of it needs to go to debt? How much of it needs to go to savings? And that's really, truly up to you as far as what your goals are. Everything about this budget is about what is important to you. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? What's the time frame for that as well? And, is it just you? Is it, you and somebody else, you and your family? Your goals might be a little bit different than theirs. You may be thinking, hey, my savings goal is to take a 3-week trip to Italy or whatever it is. And that's really important to me, but it's going to take me 3 years to save for that. Well, can you get your fellow housemates in on that goal. If it's their goal also, might be easier to save for that goal because everyone is kind of like, tunnel visioned on it. And they're like, okay, well, all right, I don't need that new blouse or I don't need that new pair of pants. I think I'm going to just put that money into my savings so that I can work towards that big trip. Or if it's, a house, a vacation home or something like that. So it's all in like, can you visualize it? How important is it to you and your group? How much time are you going to allocate to this? Because it's not where you're just like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do and that's how I'm going to do it. No, you have to revisit it. You have to check in on it. You have to hold yourself accountable. And if you are having a trouble being accountable on your own, then maybe you get an accountability buddy. Now, if it's somebody in your house, that's great. If it's a friend who has similar goals where you can help each other out to get back on track when you fall off, because we all fall off, right? Think about Weight Watchers. One of the things that Weight Watchers is successful at is helping people lose weight. But one of the ways they do that, besides their education, because it is a good program, the other way they help people is the accountability. Every week when you go to one of those meetings, yeah, you got to get on that scale, girl. You have to get on that scale and they have to mark it down, or you have to mark it down how much you weigh. And are you up or are you down from last week? It's kind of embarrassing. But ultimately, the people who utilize that program and are focused on it are really find that goal is important to them. A lot of them tend to be successful. So if you've done Weight Watchers successfully or any other type of diet program where, you had that accountability and that accountability helped you because you're like, I got to weigh in on Mondays. So on Saturday night, I am not having like 3 beverages and a big piece of chocolate cake because I know I don't want to be embarrassed on Monday. Well, you can push that over to your money side too, because, if you have an accountability buddy and you're like, oh, we're going to check in, it's our monthly check-in, and I didn't save as much as I said I was going to save. So, I need to make some adjustments here so that I don't have to show up, embarrassed again. So what can I do? And that actually really helps you for the long term. Like as you're doing these types of activities, you get better and better at them. It's not like you're going to be up there right away and ride that bike perfectly and be like, hey, look at me riding no hands. I can do this. You are going to fall off that bike a couple times. You're going to hit some, pebbles in the road. It is not going to be a smooth journey. You're going to have to like really hunker down and figure this out. And again, have some friends or family members who are going to like be there to hold you accountable. But the other thing is that it's not easy, right? So you need to like know that going in. You're not going to have immediate success because, it's hard to tell yourself no. Well, I don't like hearing no. If I want something, I want it, right? But we just have to readjust our expectations. We have to, build that foundation of slowly taking things away. One of my favorite things to tell people is, for helping saving is I have a 1/3 rule. And I say, hey, every time you get a raise, 1/3 goes towards increasing your retirement savings, 1/3 goes towards your rainy day savings, and 1/3 goes towards your spending because pat yourself on the back. You did a great job and now you can, spend a little bit more. But here's the reason I say that. It is a lot easier to take money out of your paycheck to go towards your goals before it gets in your pocket. Because once it's in your pocket, you're hearing that little jingle and you're like, oh, I got extra dollars here I can spend. And then it's a lot easier to take that away from you. Believe me, I've done it myself. So I like to hide money for myself. I'm like, oh, I got this deduction, that deduction, da 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 da. And before you know it, like I'm saving a whole bunch of money on the side without even thinking about it. But you do have to ramp up. And at first you kind of have to like take money out of your pocket. And that's the hard part. That's why I'm saying it's not going to be as easy as like, hey, I'm doing great over here. You're going to have a couple like hearts where you're like, all right, well, I do want to save this amount, but I do like spending this amount. Where can I compromise? Where can I take from? So that's where it's going to be hard, where you have to make those decisions on, okay, where am I going to cut? And eventually you'll get to that point where you're riding the bike and you're all happy, looking like Mary Poppins, gotta love it. That's where you've built that foundation and then you've added to that foundation and you keep building it. And that's kind of where you're riding that bike, and it's a lot easier. I'm not saying it's always smooth, but it's easier as the longer you do it. So keep talking about the budget. Again, I'm talking about a 50, 30, 20 budget. There's other budgets. If that doesn't work for you, do another budget, because you know what the best budget is? The one that you'll do. So this could be a good budget for you, or bad, not the right budget for you, but find the budget for you. So that's the action item today. Find a budget that works for you and build it, whether or not it's a 50, 30, 20 or a different type of budget. As long as it's something that you feel like that you can do and work on, that's the budget that you should stick with. And with that, I want to thank you. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and on LinkedIn, Regina McCann Hess. Go make it a great day. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founder's video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management.